Hi, and welcome to the Bold Leadership Stories show, where we talk about experiences shaping exceptional lives. And today I'm honored to be speaking with Dr. Angela Smith. And Dr. Angela is a holistic chiropractor once upon a time, and now she's turned coach, teacher, and mentor. She believes that the relationship between body, mind, soul, and spirit is why we're here and in this life. And the purpose of body, the physical, connected to life, the life part of us, is simply to deliver that experience. Like a compass guiding the way through the many clues and cues that we feel in any given moment, on any given day, through the body. It's so much more than our health, weight, size, shape, or abilities. There's inherent wisdom, a personalized blueprint that exists within ourselves, a template for our life. This is often misunderstood or minimized, causing disconnect within us, leading to stress and struggle. Through her work, she aims to show others how to once again tune in and reconnect to that knowing wisdom, letting the body take the lead, even when it seems like it's the problem, especially when it seems like it's the problem. Welcome, Dr. Angela.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Now that was an intro that got my attention. I tell you what, I have so many questions now
Awesome.
about what you do and how you go about achieving that mission that you have. And I'm sure there's some really great stories in there that,
Yeah.
that we'll that we'll be able to extract here during our conversation. So tell me, what's going on in your life right now?
Well, I'm in a little bit of transition and have been traveling and uh, kind of taking my mission on the road and
Okay.
doing some in-person workshops and um, following my own guide of
Okay.
travel and seeing clients wherever I can.
Okay.
Here's this amazing thing that we have called Zoom, where I
Mhm.
get to see people wherever I am in the world.
Isn't that beautiful? Yeah, I've had conversations with people in Australia and Zealand and in the UK, down in Africa. I spoke with a guy a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it's just a ton of fun.
Awesome. International.
Yes. Oh yeah. It's great when you can do it via Zoom, but then to have the ability to travel and meet face to face,
Yeah.
that's really gold there when you can get to a point where you're able to do that. I
Yeah.
think is really nice.
That's the connector. That's the, online creating some of the relationships and then meeting up in person and doing like the more personal and in-depth getting to know you and
Yeah.
creating those relationships even deeper. Yeah.
Yeah. Breaking bread and
Yeah.
toasting and having some fun together. That's all. That's what life's about. That's to me, that's the joy, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you're out and about, where have you been traveling? Have you been any interesting places?
Um, well, a few, yeah. I spent some time in Mexico. I've spent quite a bit of time traveling throughout North Carolina and just throughout the United States.
Okay.
And, you know, little day trips here and there. Spent some time in Colorado, Arizona. Where else have I been? Nebraska, um, Texas. I think the most international, Mexico. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, I
Yeah.
love Mexico. I've been there many times, different places. Used to go down to Chihuahua. The capital city of the territory of Chihuahua is called Chihuahua. So yeah, and
Naturally.
it's a great place. Lots of great restaurants and businesses, and then I've been down to Guadalajara a lot, and
Mhm.
we used to go there for business. So Mexico's beautiful. I love it down there.
Yep. Very beautiful.
So tell me about your experiences at helping people in with their relationship between their body, mind, soul, and spirit.
So going through so I've been a chiropractor for about 20 years now, and
Mm-hmm.
going through that schooling, that gave me a really awesome foundation of the various parts and pieces and nervous system, especially. That's sort of the chiropractor's bread and butter. that's
Right.
that's our and that's really what connects our physiology, our physical, our body, with our mind, with our soul, with our heart, with the spirit in which we live. And it's sort of the antenna. It's what connects us to everything outside of us. It's like the body and the nervous system is the intersection between our internal world and our external world. And there's such subtle but powerful communication that takes place when are when we're out in the world and we're engaging and interacting with other people or animals. The first thing we're interacting with is their nervous system. And this is how you can kind of walk into a room where maybe people before you they were in an argument, and you can feel it. Or we can, you can see it happening all out in the world, the interactions that people have, road rage, just the engagements we have, our closeness, our snippiness, our triggers, our joys, all of it that translates, that comes through the energy of the nervous system. That's our circuitry. And it's the it's the highway that literally directs and governs everything about how we function.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just a piece that sometimes is just overlooked or misunderstood, or not understood at all, around how we approach health, how we approach weight loss, how we approach symptoms, how we approach any of that stuff, how we approach our life as a whole. And our body is giving us the cues all the time. And there's so much. My work started out as obviously chiropractor and pain, and it has evolved, where I was working more one-on-one, sort of stepped away from the physical adjustments, and was because habits and patterns kind of get ingrained. And when you don't change, I'm kind of all over the board. If you don't change
Yeah, you're
the
fine. I've got a
the
question for you when you finish
yeah,
your thought.
okay,
Um,
the thoughts and the patterns in the environment, those patterns get ingrained, like pain patterns get ingrained in our body, that tensions that hold it, and stress.
hmm.
So my work sort of stepped away from the actual physical part, and then started to tap into, like, what was going on inside people, what was going on inside their heads about themselves, about their life, how they saw themselves, how they related to themselves, and how they met life, and how they handled all that. Because all of that is nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And there was just a shift in the results that I was getting for people, or rather the results people were getting for themselves, when they kind of came back to their insides, and what was going on inside their heads and inside them.
Okay. Yeah, I'm tracking with you, I believe. I've been through some uh, challenges, health challenges recently, where my body basically a couple of years ago it basically threw the flag down, and we're just finishing. Got Super Bowl coming up, so it threw the flag down and said, "I'm done with you. You're out of the game." And so I had to make some changes, and I had to start listening to my body. And and so I wanted to ask you, I've tried to improve my skills at listening to my body.
Mm-hmm.
What do you suggest? What kind of cues does your body tend to give you when you should be maybe looking at talking to you?
Well, everything you feel, any pain, any tension, any symptom, any um, any tightness, all of those things are all cues.
Okay.
And there's so much that we kind of experience that we just think is normal, and oh, I'm getting older, and like aches and pains are normal. And while they all are normal, they're also not meant to be permanent. They're telling you something, that something is in need of your attention. And I think for me, the body sometimes is the fall guy and sort of gets a bad rap and is like to blame. And, it creates this kind of disconnect even further within a person. And
Yeah, I've had the part of my experience the last couple of years. I've been learning about functional medicine and
Mhm.
and really focusing on health without medication. And I've learned that the body naturally wants to be in a healthy state.
Yes,
And it will,
seeking.
if you give it the resources
Mhm.
and the environment, it will heal itself
Yes.
without medication. So I've been really focusing on, okay, body, and I call it, my girlfriend Lisa, she calls it her entity.
Mhm.
It's a separate thing, and it's very intelligent. And so I consciously listen, and it tells me things. It says,
Mhm.
and I listen to it, and I know, even though I'm 65 now, I'm metabolically, I had um, my DNA tested, and metabolically, I'm 58 years old,
Mhm.
but chronologically, I'm 65.
Mhm.
So my body is actually getting the cellular age of my body is actually getting younger because
Yes.
of what I'm doing. And
Yes.
that's just exciting to me,
Yeah.
you know? It's
Yes.
it's listening, doing the right things, and getting into phase
Mhm.
with your body, and
Mhm.
treating it with respect,
Mhm.
and feeding it the best foods you can find, and not abusing it with tons of stress and over exercise. And,
Mhm.
and I used to do all those things, and that's what led up to my health issues.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering now, I've got all these resources in place. How could you help me take what I've learned already and like take it to the next level?
Mhm. Well,
Get a free medical lesson here during our session.
one of the things that I would look at is in terms of what goes on. You're noticing the patterns inside your body and like what your body is telling you. I mean, our symptoms are often very symbolic. They're very metaphorical.
Okay.
Um, and they do point you in the direction of getting clear and more in tune with what thoughts might be running in the background that
Mhm.
just that are just our normal way of knowing ourselves,
Right.
that we don't notice that we're thinking those things. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah. Yeah, there's
and
tapes
mhm,
that play, that
mhm,
come from early childhood on up
yes,
through, and after 65 years, I've got a lot of tapes, and if
yeah,
they're not productive and they come up all the time, and
mhm,
they inject cortisol, as a stressor during my
yeah,
day, it's like, okay, well, where did that come from?
mhm,
And you have to stop. I stop. I mean,
yes,
sometimes I just actually say stop, and I have to assess, okay, what is happening now, and why do I feel this emotional stress, this trigger,
mhm,
something triggered this. What
mhm,
was it? Where did it come from? Is
mhm,
it important for me to recognize right
mhm,
now?
mhm.
And if not, then I've now got ways to change that,
Mhm.
where I
There,
replace it.
in looking at what those thoughts might be and um, what our beliefs might be around kind of how we see ourselves in life, or what we think is true, like the conclusions that we've drawn.
Right.
Okay, and in the in the game of evolution, that we're always and healing and coming back into vibrancy, which is what the body is always, always, always trying to do, is to come back into equilibrium. And, that way of going in and out of stress, where that's meant to be temporary, like
Right. Yeah.
where there's sort of an emergency situation and our
Like
body
the deer,
mobilizes.
the antelope that's being chased by the lion and
Yes.
gets away after 5-10 minutes after that episode. If the deer,
Being chased.
and he survives that,
Mm-hmm.
then he's relaxed after 15 minutes. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's past, it's history. It's
He shakes it off
and moves on.
and
Doesn't
then
worry
moves
about
on. He doesn't ruminate on it. He doesn't replay it over and over and over again.
Right.
And that's
humans, we tend to
that's what we
replay those.
humans do.
Yes.
And we draw conclusions without, from a brain under development. Like when we're very small, we don't have all of our faculties, our brain waves we're just downloading everything. And we draw conclusions based on what limited information we have available to us.
Mm-hmm.
And we think that's just how it always is.
Right.
And it's
a survival
strategy. It is survival.
Young, and you don't have the choices as an adult that you might have.
And it to one person, whatever incident might have happened wouldn't necessarily have to be traumatic, but it doesn't have to be like this big trauma thing, that it can still elicit a stress response. Right. And to the nervous system, to the body, there's two states. There's either safe or not safe. After so many decades of life, and things are just cumulative, and stress is cumulative, and life is cumulative. It really does come down to, do I feel safe or not safe? Mm-hmm. And maybe you wouldn't necessarily say those words, but if there's a threat of not doing a good job and getting fired from a job, or a breakdown in a relationship, or there's so many things that how we see ourselves within that situation equals safe or not safe, threatened or not threatened.
Right.
And
so do you have any like examples of that from people that you worked with? I don't know, don't mention any names.
No. Every single client of mine, their body is definitely the lead, and their symptoms and whatever situation they come to, whether it's weight loss or hormones or diabetes or whatever, their symptoms are telling them something. For example, one of my very first clients, she was the major breadwinner for her family, and she had held on some weight. We did some hormone panels to see where she was at, and her testosterone was way high, because it had to be, given the demands that were on her in her physical reality and her financial situation with our family, but also the demands of needing to be the breadwinner of what she was putting on herself.
Right.
And as we started to kind of unpeel some of these layers, hormones started to balance, because the stresses started to ease. Okay. And her body could come back into homeostasis.
Okay.
I had another.
That's really cool. Where if you had gone to a normal doctor, what would they have done?
Probably would have put you on some kind of hormone treatment.
Hormone treatment, or some kind of relaxant.
Maybe. Maybe diet pills, or mood altering medications, which all kind of come with their own side effects. And stress is a big one, because cortisol, and you mentioned cortisol and melatonin are inversely correlated. Mm-hmm. So if somebody's body is producing more and more cortisol because the demands of their life and the demands of their mind uh, require it, then melatonin doesn't have the opportunity to come up over the course of the day. Like we wake in the morning and our cortisol is meant to be high. And over the course of
Right.
the day, here's melatonin and it's supposed to shift. Now, somebody who's not sleeping, there's a lot of different reasons why somebody wouldn't be able to get a good night's sleep. And that's definitely one of the needs that the body has just to be able to function for us. There's so much magic and amazingness that happens when we're at sleep. And if that's not allowed to happen, the body's missing out on a lot of repair and rejuvenation and cleaning house and fat burning and just awesomeness.
Mm-hmm.
So, here's also I want to, when the body knows what it's doing. So when a body is pushed into a state of stress more and more and more, and cortisol is getting higher and higher and higher, and some of the other hormones are starting to dip because the precursors to them have to be shunted over here to make more cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
If you try to override that, like by taking melatonin, you're trying to override what the body naturally knows to do to keep you safe. And you're actually adding more stress to an already stressed out system.
Okay.
And you might get more sleep, but it's not the restful sleep because these two hormones are competing with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how do you help people understand that it sounds like one of your biggest missions is to help people learn to let the body lead.
Yes.
So and by that, with that philosophy, I think you're leading kind of a movement to bring that idea and that education to the world.
Yeah. Thank you.
And how are you accomplishing that? How is that going?
The majority of the biggest way that I'm taking to accomplish that is by sharing information that people don't really think about it in these ways. When we think about weight loss, we typically think about calories in and calories out, or we think about keto, we think about there's all these different ways to lose weight, right? But there's ways that work for specific people, and our systems know what will work and what won't. So somebody who might need to lose a few pounds and they're already stressed out, sometimes the act of going on a diet or really restrictive this or really restrictive that or hardcore exercise, again, you're actually pushing the body more into more stress. Now, I think that there's just a misunderstanding of all the different things that affect our physiology. And when we only look to like food and exercise, which are major things, but we don't address what's going on inside the house, what's going on inside our head, what the environment is that we're existing in, both internally and externally.
Mm-hmm.
Those changes that we make can only get us so far, or they'll only last for so long.
Right.
And for people to understand that the relationship that they have with their body is an extension of the relationship that they have with themselves. And it's not like a fault thing. This is how we are designed. We are designed to work with our thoughts. We're designed to complete our emotions. And so much of like that antelope example, so much of that, in nature, when an antelope gets away from danger and they shake it off and they don't ruminate it on again and again and again, that experience was completed.
Mm-hmm.
But humans, we so often don't complete our experience. We stuff it down. and
Right.
because we have to get on with our day, or we need to keep the peace, or um, whatever. There's so many reasons why we wouldn't complete the cycle. And after so many times of not completing the cycle, that there's just more and more and more and more danger that takes place in our nervous system that affects how our body functions for us. And there's such a conditioning within our society of looks and health and what those actually mean. And it why I got into this in the first place was my own relationship with my body,
Mhm.
and then just hearing all of the women around me and the clients that I had who were constantly kind of against themselves because of how they looked, or it just took away their life experience. It just made everything smaller and less, tried to hide and less visible, and their experience of themselves just got smaller and smaller and smaller.
Mhm.
And we go to such extremes to change how we look, hoping that will change how we feel about ourselves, when they actually, it's the reverse. And because our insides, that's what's leading that's what's leading to the physical manifestations of stuff in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how that's all fascinating. It's amazing. I've learned a lot about how that process works in my own journey. But 2 years ago, it had just
Yeah.
just flown right over my head, and I'd had no idea. Um, so I appreciate the effort that you're taking to kind of get the word out that,
Thank
hey,
you.
we've got a tremendous opportunity here in life to work together with our entity, with our body,
Mhm.
and that because of the environment and just knowledge, the life will pass you by, and and you're going to miss out on the joy and the gratitude and the appreciation that's available to you because you're in a stress state all the time. And it's not something, anybody can fix that, right?
Right.
So it's you and people like you that are kind of leading the path now away from Western medicine, if you will,
Mhm.
where you go to the doctor and you give them total responsibility for your
Yes.
life and your body, and you just give them access to everything, and they say, well, we're going to give you a pill and that's going to fix you. And I feel violated by that
Mhm.
throughout my lifetime. It's like, well, you're not fixing the problem, you're just
Mhm.
covering up with some
You're
kind of
masking it.
medicine that you're making money on,
Mhm.
and it's not serving me anymore. So
Mhm.
I've taken the bull by the horns and said, hey, I appreciate what you're doing, but it's in an acute situation, if I had to get surgery or some issue that needed immediate assistance, broken arm or something, you
Mhm.
guys are great. But for the ongoing
Mhm.
lifestyle, everyday stuff, um, you're not serving me. So I need to
Mhm.
go to people like you, Dr. Angela, to help me kind of figure out what I've got here
Yeah.
and learn about it, take that responsibility into
Yeah.
my own self,
Yeah.
and have that for me. And so I see that as your mission and your purpose. Is that
Yeah. Absolutely. And
okay? Good.
and kind of very much what goes with that is, uh, from what you read in the bio, there's there's information, there's wisdom that's pertinent and specific to us,
Hmm.
to our respective lives. And it's it's beyond genetics, and there are things that are true for us, and our likes and our dislikes and our what our gifts are and what we want to contribute to life and what we want to experience, and our specific way of seeing things. All of those things contribute to how our body functions. And when we don't live in accordance to that inherent blueprint, we feel it. And this is why I went from chiropractor to what I'm doing now, because it was the evolution and the growth of me. And when we resist anything that's happening in our life, especially like if we know we're in a job or position that no longer fulfills us and we're being called to something different, and we don't answer that call, or we don't at least explore it or even let it be there, when we try to suppress how we truly feel, that's the biggest source of stress on this planet. And there is a blueprint that exists in every single person. And there's a way to live with that blueprint, by that blueprint that is coming from your heart and your soul. And when we ignore that, that's the initial breakdown, before even the mindset, before even all the physical things that cause us stress. That is the biggest source of stress, in my opinion, because it's constantly there. It's like when we try to push down our emotions or push down our truth or whatever, that's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. And it's an incredible amount of energy that's being pulled from the body's normal functions to
keep that down,
just maintain status quo.
Yeah. So it sounds like taking the time to listen to your soul, maybe, and get access to your blueprint. I love that idea of a blueprint, because to me, I'm an old school. I grew up in engineering world, and we used to have blueprints. Actual paper rolls, paper rolls, and we lay them out on a big old table, and they were blue because the chemicals that were used to transfer the images were blue. And it wasn't, like today where everything's in color. Back then it was blue. So a blueprint was like a de facto design that you'd come up with for a structure or a pathway, a process that you could use as a model to actually build the actual thing, whatever that blueprint was. So you have a blueprint of a building, and it would have a layout and measurements and exactly how to build that structure in real life. And so blueprint means a lot to me. And when you say that, it means, okay, how do I get access to that big roll of paper and spread it out on a big table and look at it and say, oh, that's how I do it. Is there a way to do that?
Yes.
With my body, and how do I do that?
Be still.
Okay.
It really is sit down, and it's a personal inquiry. It's let's take a look at what's showing up. Like, what am I dealing with? What am I experiencing? Where in my life, where in my body, where in my relationships, like what feels inflamed, what feels tense, what feels unfulfilling, what feels whatever, whatever you're experiencing. And it's sort of a constant communication and relationship that we have with ourselves, like we would with another person, or we would with our spouse, or we would with a child, or whatever. And a consistent checking in with. And and this kind of speaks back to our early childhood, when our kind of ways of being start to develop. And I'll use myself as an example, that in my adult life, I'm often a procrastinator. And that used to be like a,
Yeah,
uh-huh,
I've got that. Once in a
that
while, like every day, I do something that I don't do something that I should be doing.
it, but it's, and I learned that about myself, that that was something bad. That was a fault. That wasn't an awesome character. That was that was a flaw.
Right.
But if you go back to the nature of safe or unsafe, that's a freeze. We fight, flight, or freeze. That's my version of freezing. When if I'm overwhelmed in my life with too much to do, I just don't do anything. And when I notice that that's my cue. When I
Yeah.
notice that I'm procrastinating, that's my
Or
cue to
fawn.
go,
There's flight, fries, freeze, or fawn too,
yes, but
right?
yes, but in sort of the emergency,
Uh-huh.
it's usually one of those three. And
Okay.
you can kind of even put fawn, that's a bigger conversation. But you can see it when people, I've also been known to be a runner. Um, but but here's my point. I've learned these things about myself. I've learned my MO of how I function and how I respond to life, because I've stopped to take a look at it, and I've stopped to, based on these things, what might I be thinking that I don't know that I'm thinking? And and then the once you start the inquiry, you're going to be shown, because your mind wants, if you ask yourself questions, your mind wants to answer them. There's a reticular activating system in your brain that says, I need these answers, and it's going to go out and like an antenna and find those answers for you. So asking the questions, made better questions, rather than like, what the hell is wrong with me, with, you know, you're going to find out answers of what the hell's wrong with you,
Right.
and that so much of this teaching and understanding of how we function, our physiology, with our mind and our brain and our heart and our truth, and our emotions, all of those things, when you come to understand how interconnected they are, you can't compartmentalize them. You can try, and you can do it for, you could do it for a really long time, but in the act of compartmentalizing, disconnect is happening. And somewhere down the road, um, body breaks down, and then you have no choice but to rest and come back to, let me figure out how I got here. And
Mm.
let me figure out in the here and now what is needed to allow my body to come back to a state of parasympathetic safeness, to where the healing can actually take place. Because if you're perpetually running from that saber-toothed tiger, there's no healing allowed. The body can't get to the the organs or the systems and the mechanisms that would allow healing if you're constantly on the run. And our society is built that there's just no rest. Even if we're sitting on the couch, our insides are going 100 miles an hour, because we're thinking,
Yeah.
and we're
Right.
trying to
And so
stay safe.
you're probably eating the wrong things. You're not taking care of your body. You're stressed out. And that notification that you get, I was really lucky because
Mm,
it was pretty mild. But
yeah.
there's a lot of people who, their body just quits and maybe their heart stops and they don't wake up. They're dead.
Mhm.
That's
Uh,
their first indicator.
yeah.
They've been their body's probably been telling them for a long time, but they
Yeah.
haven't listened. And then
Yeah.
eventually you get a stroke, you get a heart attack, you get something catastrophic happens, and your body just gives up, and you're done. Your
Yes.
journey here on this planet is over. So,
Yes.
I was really fortunate to have really good people in my life that helped me see the error of my ways
Mm,
and give me really good feedback, and my body told me
yeah.
mostly it was like, dude, you need to change some things, or
Mhm.
I'm leaving. I'm filing divorce papers. I'm done with you.
It's the physical is the obvious, right? It's the most obvious. It's what gets our attention. It's what makes us stop in our tracks, our physical body, or our physical, like what's going on in our life.
Right.
But it's speaking for the other parts of us.
Yeah, I see that. So, and it's beautiful what you're doing is helping people to kind of corral all of that.
Yeah.
It's not simple. It's complex.
No, it
It
can be
simple.
complex. It can be it actually, the body is nothing if not simple. And it's very symptomatic. I mean, it's very systematic, and it's very,
yeah.
If I don't have this, if I don't have this, I'm going to rob Paul to pay Peter. But there's so much of our conditioning in our Western world and medicine that we are taught to fear what's going on, that symptoms are bad and the health crisis is bad. But what's really interesting,
to go to the doctor to get a pill.
Right. But what's really interesting is the health crisis is actually the body's attempt at coming back to equilibrium. But we think the pain or the health crisis is the crisis. Right. And it's not. It's what led up to the breaking point.
Okay. Yeah.
Cancer is a big one. Yeah. Cancer is a big one.
Mm-hmm. It's not a death sentence necessarily.
No. And I might be opening up another can of worms for a bigger conversation, but when we're embryologically developing and we go from like tiny little like nothingness of cells, and then we grow and develop and develop and develop, and we form what looks like a pea pod. And there's brain structures there's structures within that development of the brain and the other areas of the body, and they come from the same cell line. It comes from the same histology. And the areas of the brain, when we're met with some sort of stress in our life, the nature of the stress will register somewhere in a certain area of the brain. And that area of the brain is connected to certain organs or cells within the body. There's a connection. The severity of that stress, the nature of that stress, how traumatic it is, how minimal it is, there's very much a rhyme and reason to the symptoms that we experience that go with the nature of our stress and how we perceive it.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, let's take a little time out. And it's a lot to process.
I know.
So yeah, and just for the purpose of this episode, I think that's enough to kind of
chew on.
Yeah, it's a lot to chew on. Thank you very much. Tell me, what's the next for you? What's your future look like? Where are you headed now? What's your vision?
My vision is very much, well, remember when I was talking a little bit earlier about when there's things that are wanting to come up and out of you, like new ways of knowing yourself or new truths of knowing yourself, and following that, there's an art piece that's wanted to come up and out of me that I've kind of suppressed, and that's starting to come up and out, and more workshops and more these kinds of conversations. And when people have a better understanding of how they function, how they actually work in the bigger picture rather than just this, like manage your stress and manage your symptoms. When you have a bigger understanding, a more fulfilled understanding of how you actually work, stress can decrease because you have more power to change. Right. Do you know what I mean? And that's what this year is. That's what this year is about for me. And sharing more and more and more about that, but also like I'm walking my walk and I'm walking my talk by kind of exhaling what's in me that wants to come out. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for joining me on the show today. And yeah,
Thank you for
look
having
forward
me.
to telling everybody about our episode. And when you're back in the Temecula area, stop by and say hello.
I will. I will. I
Yeah.
will.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.